everything's fantastic. I remember one time you saying about your hand back in the day when you was in your other flat, and you'd be like, you know, your hand is such a great tool, you know, just the design of it, everything, it works. It does what it's supposed to do. You wouldn't want anything else on the end of your arm, would you? Except a hand. Well, you wouldn't want a hook there, would you? You know, so or a foot, you know, or something else. It'd be weird, wouldn't it? Because that's what we're used to.
How am I going to deal with this week? I've got a bit
like a superhero, mate. You're going to deal with it like a superhero, like every other hero. That's why I say Spider-Man's relatable. He's got those types of problems of family, having to care for others, and also having to care for people that are complete strangers at the expense of people who he really cares about. But knowing that it's right, and if he was to ask his family, I suppose they'd say, yeah, do that. But because he can't tell them, he's having to assume that, yeah, they would fully support his actions. You know, the fact that he's doing it in secret, in a way, brings us, as the reader, privy to those conflicts in a different kind of sense. You know, when you do good and you go out to work and you feed your family, you know, sometimes that's a thankless task, isn't it? It's like the anonymity of being the hero every day. It's anonymous. Nobody sees the millions of people out there that are heroes every day. They're anonymous. It's almost like they're wearing a mask, do you understand? So nobody sees the face, but they know that there are heroes out there every day doing good for others, sacrificing their own need for the needs of others.
That's still quite selfish, though.
Is it?
For your family, that's just selfishness enlarged.
So you mean for your family alone? Well, you got to be careful about how far you. I think you would have to be careful because you are dealing with others, and if you're going to talk about respect, the autonomy of others, you know, it's like live and let live. Do not injury, loss or harm, you know. And obviously, I think you start with yourself. Don't injure, loss or harm yourself. Or don't create a culture of that type of thinking, which then would make it that you would do it to others. And that's one of the problems with some of the areas of public service and the way the management is being run. They're teaching people that, you know, a dualism and schizophrenic way of thinking where people have a moral conscience and they know the right thing to do, yet they're doing the opposite to the right thing because their job is saying you must cut people's benefits. That's not a heroic thing. That's not saving the country, anything. That's actually killing people who we can save now for something that is a fiction, potentially. That might not actually happen yet. But we know that people not eating would definitely cause problems. Do you know what I mean? The power of myth to this is a weird one, isn't it? And the mum becomes the Joker. But in a way,
it's polarization.
Yeah.
Where you had the unity in a what's his name? Bruce. What's his name? Brucey. Yeah, you got the unity in the one, or the divergence into polarisms.
Yeah. People who are public servants, they suffer from stress. They've got this hierarchy which is similar to the alpha male. The alpha male is brutal and dominates them, and all the rest of them suffer stress through the fact that this one alpha male or alpha position of manager comes and puts the work on them, and they suffer from stress. And as a natural result of them suffering that stress, misery loves company, so they're happy to give stress to others because their whole life is built on stress, you know. And sometimes they don't even recognise it because society says you need to have a job and you need to be doing A, B or C, and that's just the way it is. We're now reaching a point in time where people are beginning to question these paradigms, these things that we found ourselves, these belief systems where do we have to go to work when we've got all these automations and robots and things could just be easy, you know? But at the same time, You know, is idle hands the devil's playground? Will people just become corrupt? You know, by these I suppose vulgar expanses of time where they don't have to be responsible for anything. You know, the desert of the real, because people don't engage in the real. They don't recognise what's real anymore. They just think, yeah, stuff comes to the supermarket and I pick it up at the supermarket and that's all I need.
You need to take time to think as well. There was a word you were looking for which wasn't corrupt. It was
decadent.
Decadent, yeah.
Yeah, I knew the word, but you know,
a classic word.
Yeah, that's a little bit more descriptive. Decadent creates the corruption.
Let's see what decadent is saying.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of banding about words.
Yeah.
Sure about
well, spoiled.
Well, let's not jump to conclusions.
No, I'm saying that. I like to jump to the conclusion sometimes. I've lived a life. I'm entitled to, you know, some conclusions on some of the things that I've experienced. In some cases, it's spoilt behaviour.
No, it's a deterioration. It's degeneration, decay, falling off in moral or aesthetic standards.
Moral or aesthetic, right? Yet, it doesn't mean that they're lacking necessarily.
It's a falling away.
It's a falling as.
Well, then
as you get more stuff, you tend to care less about the stuff and the method by which you got the stuff. There's been great struggles by humanity to create the inventions that today we've got washing machines and we've got electrics and we've got all these great tools that make life probably 1,000 times better than how it used to be. And people have forgotten how that is. And we're relying on non-renewable things like oil and gas, and when that runs out, people will be back to the Stone Age, back to the way the ancestors were living. And for some people, that's terrifying. Going back to that, they're like, oh, we've got no power, you know, or life will be so hard for us and we'll struggle again. But those are the realities on the horizon for all of humanity, if we don't at least ask the question and say, you know, how do we solve this? In a way that we can all agree. You know, the fear of the rich is that they want to run away and hide in tunnels and hide underground and keep things for themselves. Solipsism, extreme solipsism. I suppose you could have left, middle and right solipsism in terms of how emotionally you connect to others. Are you extremely anti-human then?
I'm not sure if you can really class the rich as being solipsist.
No, because everybody's different.
Because what you're doing with them is that a belief in the external goods are the true basis of reality.
Well, I don't think they believe that either, because they'd be happy with having 2 billion, but they're not, because they want 10 billion.
Yeah, so that's nothing to do with yourself. It's a concern with dominating the
fear.
External.
It's fear.
A recognition of the reality of the external world and the value of it. It's like solipsism in reverse. It's not the knowledge of the self that matters. It's the control and domination of the other. Which comes
What's the fear of the other then?
Right, but it's not solipsist.
Don't worry,
Well, I think we'd have to say that human beings exist at certain stages with certain emotional states, and one of those emotional states is sometimes they're going to be selfish. To use the big word,
solipsism, I would think, is actually quite a useful term and quite a useful state for people to acquire possession of.
Well, it's an explanation of why I think some people have that thought behaviour. If they're solipsistic, then they're doing that based on the reason that they think that the most important thing is themselves, their world, their immediate things that concern them, and everything else is secondary.
It's also the basic view, as I understand it, being quite solipsist of myself, and that my moral etiquette has no external value, but because I hold it myself, I exercise myself in terms of that morality. It doesn't matter to anyone else, but somehow it matters to me. That I exercise restraint in certain ways, and that I try to be a good little messiah in my little way.
Well, another way of saying it is dog eat dog.
No, I'm not
Where
saying dog eat dog.
society has created monsters based on ideas, wherever the idea came
I don't
from.
go for the idea of dog eat dog. That's not my.
Somebody introduced that. It's the same like evolution. Evolution and dog eat dog came about the same time, hand in hand, which is again the opposite of that moral, having that moral code.
Yeah, but
And when you say
I
moral,
was just thinking
you
before,
tend to
you-
think
you're
of
doing
sacrifice.
Two different things there. You've got social Darwinism, which is like is it? Eugenics. It's dealing with the physical. But then you might have a philosophical Darwinism, which deals with the evolution of ideas. And in terms of which idea is fittest.
I think you're giving Darwin too much credit. Darwin didn't create philosophy.
Let's think.
You know,
about
you
it.
might as well call it
Let's
Aristotle
think- Let's think about it for a second, because I'm not talking Darwin was a great philosopher. I'm talking about the evolution of ideas.
Yeah, again, somebody
Another thing-
tagged Darwin's name and put evolution with Darwin and said this Darwin means evolution means Darwin. Your progression of ideas.
No,
Right.
no, not just progression of ideas. I'm talking about an evolution of ideas. It starts off with basic seeds of belief,
Cleaning bill here must be murder.
which
What's your
Like a biogenesis, a organic
fight with other ideas.
an organic growth development, because one idea creates the other idea. If you don't have that idea before, like you couldn't have the technologies to then create the new idea to even foresee it.
But those ideas which don't come up to scratch get quickly devoured.
I was hoping.
Well, it's-
And what's useful in terms of protein and basic common whatever, it's absorbed and made use of.
it's like people
Well,
people have children.
Is rational instrumentalism or instrumental rationalism a feasible idea? Well, it can fight out with certain other ideas, and yeah.
When you have a child, people have children, so the parent has the child, and the child will have traits of the parents, they'll say. They'll look like the parents, but in some ways they will differ. And if you can say, well, the advantages that the parents possess now are bestowed upon the child, so the child having been given at birth, those particular blessings will now gain a whole new set of blessings or advantages or skills or powers from their own development that you would hope is added to the foundation of the powers that already existed. But here's the problem. The only way you can truly take advantage of that is to know what you've got, to care about it, not to be spoilt, not to take it for granted and say, well, this is a blessing. You know, otherwise you don't have anything.